House Press Secretary and outnumbered co-host.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning to you, Geraldo. So, Geraldo, everybody saw this coming. A very dangerous mission. And yesterday, everybody's worst nightmare came true.
It was more than everybody seeing it coming in the kind of a general cliche of that, Steve. We had specific, reliable intelligence that it was going to happen. I never heard a warning quite so vivid. There's a menace. It's coming. High security that is really red alert. We know it's happening, and yet it still happened, and still 13 died, and 15 were wounded, some of them critically. How in the hell did that happen since we knew the attack was coming? These are very, very hard questions, and I really believe that when all is said and done, they have to be answered. But I have a suggestion, because I don't think we have any capability now that we have dismantled all of the bases that you have lifted. We don't have any real intelligence on the ground to help us find ISIS-K, the alleged perpetrators of this atrocity, where not only were all these GIs killed, but scores of Afghans, including little children, were also murdered. The Taliban wants to be a member of the family of nations. The Taliban should find ISIS-K. If they want to prove that they have real bona fides and their intentions are sincere in terms of their own nation building, and they want the credit that they desperately need, and they want the international assistance that they desperately need, they need the international legitimacy. If all those things are true, and they are, the Taliban must now bring to justice the scum who perpetrated that awful atrocity against us. It was gut-wrenching. I covered the Marine barracks back in 1983 in Beirut, Lebanon. It was very reminiscent of that. It's a horrible, horrible feeling in the pit of your stomach. Innocent men and women out there trying their best to help these refugees board a plane to freedom, and they're blown to pieces. The worst day in 10 years in the services. It's just beyond the bond.
I think what you have wrong is that you think the Taliban want legitimacy. They got heroin. They got China. They are bringing in the Haqqani network to work the security. Al-Qaeda is back. That is not a group of people that want legitimacy. They had one country recognize them before we invaded, and that was Saddam Hussein's Iraq. They don't care about that. We think they care. They should care about it. Maybe they should care about it, but they don't.
I believe, Brian, that you've been right about a lot of things. I do believe, however, that the Taliban, just the cooperation that we have seen in recent days, they have, it seems to me, tried their best to do their best, however questionable it is, however seedy their background. You play with the forces that you have, not the ones you wish you had. Right now, the Taliban is there. They are securing the perimeters. The evacuation's going on today again. Presumably, whoever was in command of the perimeter didn't reinforce it sufficiently. I believe we really have to find out who dropped the ball here to let this terrible thing happen. We have to get ISIS-K. That's the president's pledge. That's the way the Americans do it. You hit us, we'll hit you back. It may take forever, but eventually we're going to bring you to justice. We need the capability of doing that, and I submit the Taliban has the capability right now to put up or shut up. Are you trying to be a member of the family of nations, or are you a rogue outlaw gang that's going to perpetrate whatever violence you want on these people?
Keep in mind, they did let the suicide bombers through the checkpoint, so they're not exactly working with us. Kayleigh, I want to bring you in. Yesterday, Peter Doocy, we saw the press conference at 5 o'clock yesterday, and we watched the president, and then Peter Doocy asked him a question. We're going to get to that in just a second. But then the president puts his head down, and that's making headlines. He's being ripped in the press for that. Some of the headlines are optics disaster, a defining image, the defining photo of Biden's presidency. Then he said he was given a list of who he was instructed to call on. Then Peter asks him the question about, does he take responsibility for this? Listen.
The buck stops with you. Do you bear any responsibility for the way that things have unfolded in the last 2 weeks?
I bear responsibility for fundamentally all that's happened of late. But here's the deal. You know, I wish you'd one day say these things. you know as well as I do that the former president made a deal with the Taliban that he would get all American forces out of Afghanistan by May 1.
Do you think that people have an issue with pulling out of Afghanistan or just the way that things have happened?
I think they have an issue that people are likely to get hurt. Some, as we've seen, have gotten killed, and that it is messy. The reason why, whether my friend will acknowledge it or has reported it, the reason why there were no attacks on Americans, as you said, from the date until I came into office, was because the commitment was made by President Trump, I will be out by May 1st. In the meantime, you agree not to attack any Americans. That was the deal. That's why no American was attacked.
Kayleigh, he bears responsibility, but then he pivots and he blames Donald Trump. Is it President Trump's fault?
No, and it is very hard to believe that that is, in fact, our commander-in-chief. How sad. No, it's not President Trump's fault. President Trump negotiated a conditions-based withdrawal. It had 3 main conditions, and there were several cascading others, but it said, do not kill an American soldier. There will be repercussions. The power of the United States military will come down on you. Form a coalition government that isolates al-Qaeda was another one of those conditions, and leave a small contingency of special forces to engage in counterterrorism missions. Those were the 3 prongs. Guess what, Joe Biden? It wasn't President Trump that set this arbitrary deadline that, as one high-level intelligence officer said to me, became a Taliban red line. That was what you did. It wasn't President Trump that withdrew the military before the civilians. That's what you did. It wasn't President Trump that has given a kill list to the Taliban. That's what you did. It wasn't President Trump that closed Bagram. That is what you did. And the President of the United States putting his head on that podium, that tells you all you need to know. We used to have a commander-in-chief who, as General Kellogg described to me, strategically called the head of the Taliban after killing Soleimani. Right. Strategically, in the second call, said, you kill American troops. And he described to me very graphic language that I can't repeat because it's classified. But that language, the Taliban understood. There were repercussions under President Trump. There is weakness from President Joe Biden, who doesn't deserve the title commander-in-chief.
Well, I'm sure he would like a do-over on that particular image, which is the defining image of yesterday from the White House. But Kayleigh, you know, what happened yesterday essentially undermines the story that we've been told about Joe Biden. Hey, elect Joe Biden president of the United States because he's a seasoned leader. He's got all this foreign policy experience. He's a steady hand. He can protect Americans. And now after yesterday, maybe not so much.
No, he's not a seasoned leader either. Not only that, he's not compassionate. I used to believe Joe Biden was this compassionate guy. You know, he portrayed himself that way. But the language we have heard over the last 7 days, which is worth reviewing, that ultimately ended last night. He now says we will hunt you down after 13 servicemen and women, heroes, gave their lives. After that, his language changed. But what was the language in the 7 days leading up to this? No one's being killed. Afghans hanging from planes. We know the human remains were found in a wheel. Well, that happened 4 or 5 days ago. How callous. He made a callous joke yesterday, too, or the day prior, I should say, just before servicemen were killed, when he was asked by Peter Alexander about Americans being left behind. And then Jen Psaki called this a success from the podium, a success. And then 13 servicemen die, and the language changes. But we will not forget the words that were said leading up to this moment.
So Tom Malinowski used to work in the Obama White House, now a congressman from New Jersey, writes this, Geraldo. The United States will save billions by not arming the Afghan National Army, but now we face the cost of dealing with the fallout, which makes all of us, which already includes caring for tens of thousands of new refugees. The U.S. undermined its credibility with its allies, damaged its ability to earn the trust of future local partners, and abandoned millions of innocent people it professed to care about to a cruel fate. Meanwhile, Taliban-ruled Afghanistan is already becoming a haven for terrorist groups of all stripes. Please tell me what is good about what is happening.
I think that, Brian, you have to remember that it was both President Trump and President Biden who jointly believed that the war had run its course. 20 years was enough, that it was going on, grinding on, going nowhere. They decided, and the American people, by every survey, approved of removing our troops from Afghanistan after the longest war in our history. What went wrong was what went wrong. The president making rookie mistakes. The closing of Bagram that has been so often cited. And I spent so much time in Bagram as compared to Kabul International Airport, a rambling wreck of a vulnerable airport, as opposed to a fortified military base. It was almost a no-brainer. I don't understand the rookie mistakes made in the execution of a plan that should have been popular and should have, by every logic, gotten the most vulnerable people out, and then the military. It's a failure of execution that is appalling, and I think will cost Joe Biden his political future.
In my humble
such as
opinion,
it is.
President Trump never would allow Kabul to fall. As soon as they didn't engage Ghani in the coalition talks, it would have stopped. And he was willing to use his military. He showed that over and over again. And as soon as they started moving on Kabul, he would have started blowing them up.
He would have.
All right, Kayleigh,
A lot of that is
Geraldo.
wishful thinking, Brian. A lot of that is wishful thinking.
Because he lost the election.